The story began with two women preparing on a film set located on a remote island. One of them, Hayden, held the lead role. In front of them was a cage filled with dogs. The director approached and reviewed Hayden's part in the film, explaining that a group of ferocious dogs would chase her, and when caught, she was to reach her hand dramatically toward the sky. This disturbed Hayden. She felt uneasy. Although she liked dogs, the ones brought to the set seemed strange and unusually aggressive. Elsewhere on the island, a team was responsible for rescuing and caring for stray dogs. One of them, Maria, was accompanied by her colleagues Marcos and Hector. Maria ventured out in search of a missing dog and soon approached a cave. Hearing faint whimpering from inside, she entered and discovered hundreds of bats nesting there. Her flashlight disturbed the creatures, which then swarmed past her. Fortunately, she emerged unharmed and resumed her search. It wasn't long before she located the dog, but something unsettled her. Upon closer inspection, she saw a bat biting the dog and feeding on its blood. Maria removed the bat and tried to leash the dog, but the animal barked and resisted. Marcos and Hector, hearing the commotion, looked toward the noise with concern. Suddenly, Maria's struggle turned into screams, alarming the others. They feared something terrible had happened. However, the situation was less dire. The dog, showing signs of rabies, had fought against being restrained. When Maria returned, she instructed Hector to isolate the animal from the rest. Just then, Marcos heard something in the bushes. As he investigated, a dog lunged at him and dragged him into the dark forest. Maria and Hector were horrified and began calling out for him. Their fear escalated when the rabid dog broke out of its cage and escaped. While Maria kept calling for Marcos, Hector climbed into the vehicle to radio for help, but was bitten on the foot by another dog. Maria too was attacked, knocked to the ground by a charging dog. She managed to fight it off, throwing it onto the windshield. The beast survived and became even more aggressive. Hector was overpowered and dragged into the forest as well. Terrified, Maria climbed into the vehicle and kicked the dog off the windshield. But she hadn't checked the interior. Another fierce dog was already inside. It lunged at her and killed her. This beast wasn't normal. It had unnaturally large fangs. 15 years passed. A businessman named Vince Ventura had since taken over one of the tropical islands. He was organizing a competition and had invited 5 content creators to participate. The prize, $1 million. Thalia, his associate, was enthusiastic about the event. Vince introduced the contestants: Queen, a confident influencer; Farmer, a rustic content creator; Mason Kelly, and 2 siblings, Violet and Collins, who co-owned a bar and created online content to supplement their income. When Vince sent them the invitation, Collins was thrilled, but Violet hesitated. She disliked the idea of going to a secluded island. Nevertheless, they all gathered the next day to board a helicopter piloted by Thalia. During the flight, they talked about their respective niches. Queen, notably, placed banana peels around her neck, baffling the others. Thalia pointed out Vincia, a boat where a party was planned. Once they arrived at the resort, Vince greeted them. Collins immediately asked for the Wi-Fi password, but Vince showed him his private cell antenna, which was off-limits. Vince gave them a tour, including the island's dogs. He explained that since purchasing the island, he had envisioned making it a paradise for these animals. Some dogs were kept in a pen, and when Farmer tried engaging with them, they reacted negatively. Thalia took the group to their quarters. Vince announced the competition would begin the next day, and the helicopter departed. That evening, the dogs roamed near the cabin as the guests relaxed. Violet, feeling uneasy, stepped outside for air. She heard a dog barking and a puppy whimpering. Curious, she approached a cage and saw a tearful puppy. But when she tried to pet it, an adult dog snapped at her. More dogs arrived, barking furiously. Frightened, Violet ran, unknowingly further from the cabin. She stopped when she heard a branch break. Thankfully, it was only Collins filming her. He believed the competition could boost their online careers. Violet, however, wanted to leave, but Collins convinced her to stay one more day. At dawn, the group signed NDAs over breakfast. Vince recounted the island's history. 15 years ago, a horror film titled Hayden and the Rabid Dogs had been filmed there. But production ceased after the animal caretakers mysteriously vanished. Violet demanded to know what they were actually doing there. Vince explained they would participate in the Canine Crusade. The competition involved capturing dogs released onto the island. The contestant who captured the most would win part of the island. There were cameras throughout the island, and Vince would compile the footage into videos for them to post. Some participants were excited, but Violet was skeptical. She warned them about her encounter with a rabid dog the previous night. Vince dismissed her concerns and insisted the dogs were tame. To prove it, he brought them to the enclosure and attempted to feed the youngest dog. Instead, the largest dog, Spike, charged out and bit Vince's hand. Panic ensued. The group fled to the cabin and locked themselves inside. Spike eventually broke the window. Collins defended himself with a lamp while Farmer used a metal pipe. The dog was incredibly strong, but Queen finally drove it away with a fire extinguisher. They hid in a storage room and tried to help Collins, who had been bitten. They agreed that Thalia was their only chance for help. Queen suggested escaping through a window, but they needed weapons. Farmer took a golf club, and Mason broke a bottle to use the shards. Farmer went outside but was attacked. He managed to wound a dog with glass, but it didn't back off. He had to retreat. They decided Queen and someone else would go to Thalia's cabin. Farmer offered to create a distraction. While the girls prepared, the men headed outside with makeshift tools. Queen and Violet slipped out, but Collins, too injured to climb, urged them to go without him. Farmer and Mason drew the dogs away by making noise. Queen and Violet soon found Vince's mangled body. They thought they were safe when a puppy appeared, but it attacked Queen. Violet kicked it away, but an older dog released the rest by pressing the cage button. Back at the cabin, Collins nearly got bitten through the window. Mason and Farmer reached the antenna and climbed it, losing part of the ladder in the process. Meanwhile, Queen and Violet found Thalia playing VR games. They told her everything. She thought it was a prank until she realized the danger. Thalia began a live stream, but when they finally convinced her to call for help, they learned the signal was cut, damaged by Mason and Farmer earlier. Queen saw the dogs climbing trees to reach the antenna and warned the others. Mason used electric cables to shock the dogs, successfully knocking them out. Trying to help, Thalia fired a flare at the tower. It exploded, further weakening it. Mason and Farmer were forced to jump into the sea as the tower collapsed. They swam to shore and reunited with the others. Thalia said they had no way to call for help now, but she had a key to the party boat, located on the opposite side of the island. Violet insisted on rescuing her brother first. Mason argued it was too dangerous and assumed Collins was already dead. Violet refused to abandon him. Queen proposed going to the mainland for help, and Mason agreed. But Violet and Farmer would try to rescue Collins while the others waited at the cabin. As the group split up, Mason stayed on the roof, unaware he was already being watched by one of the feral dogs. Inside the cabin, Thalia confided in Queen that actress Hayden was her sister. Meanwhile, Hayden was shown in another location, recording something separately. Her assistant presented a live stream where Hayden spoke about recent events. However, the video was suddenly interrupted, raising their suspicions about the situation. At that moment, Violet and Farmer arrived at the cabin where Collins was supposed to be, but all they found were bloodstains. Upon hearing strange noises, they went to the kitchen and found Collins in a dazed state, with blood on his mouth, consuming raw meat. Back at Thalia's cabin, Mason became aggressive. He knocked Thalia to the ground and demanded the key to the boat. Once he had it, a dog surprised him by biting his hand, stealing the key and swallowing it. The animal then chased the group, forcing them to flee. Mason, injured and unable to keep up, was attacked again by the ferocious animal. The girls could only hear his screams as they ran for their lives. Elsewhere, the other trio found a passenger vehicle, making it easier to return to Thalia's cabin. Fortunately, they encountered the two girls along the way and offered them a ride. Thalia took the wheel and remarked that Mason had become dog food. As they continued fleeing, the vehicle lost power and shut off. Farmer and Violet got out to push the car until it started again. While doing so, they heard barking approaching rapidly. Farmer then spotted a large group of rabid dogs in the distance. Fortunately, the vehicle started just in time, and Thalia accelerated as fast as she could. She headed toward a small bridge with a plan in mind. They threw bottles of alcohol and Farmer fired a flare gun, creating flames that stopped the dogs from advancing. The group arrived at an old film set, where Thalia found a paintball gun. Farmer was not enthusiastic about it, but Violet insisted they needed to prepare for the next animal attack. The group gathered items they believed would be useful. They created makeshift weapons, and Violet was lucky enough to find a bow and arrows. They spent the night there and, thankfully, were not attacked. The next morning, as they prepared to leave, they realized that Collins was missing. They called out to him and discovered he had gone to the cave where everything had started. Collins, acting strangely, began entering the dark place. Growing impatient, Farmer followed him. At the entrance of the cave, Farmer saw Collins emerging, still disoriented from the dog bite. Despite this, Farmer brought him back. Seeing that he could barely stand, they tied him up in the car and drove off. Luck was on their side when they discovered dog feces containing the boat key. As Thalia cleaned it, Spike and his dog pack arrived. Panicked, she jumped into the vehicle, and they drove away, but the dogs attacked the car. One of them tried to bite Thalia, but Queen, using her makeshift weapon, managed to kill it. More dogs followed. Violet tried to shoot arrows at them but failed. Meanwhile, Collins, unable to stay restrained, grabbed Queen's gun, cut the ropes, and leapt out of the vehicle, running away. Farmer followed to help. Collins hid briefly, but when he reappeared, he had a dog with him. Luckily, Farmer acted quickly and killed it. But more dogs soon attacked. Back in the car, the girls tried to flee from the pursuing animals. In their panic, they fell off a cliff but were relieved to see the boat nearby. They swam toward it as Spike and the other dogs jumped into the water in pursuit. The girls managed to climb onto the boat, but just as Thalia was about to get on, a dog grabbed a rope and tried to attack her. She still had the flare gun and fired it into the dog's mouth. What they didn't expect was to find Mason alive on the boat, with a dog under his control. He had somehow tamed it, terrifying the girls. Violet tried to shoot him with an arrow but missed, and the dog attacked Queen. Thalia helped by shooting paintball rounds at the dog's nose, giving Queen the chance to grab it and throw it into the water. Mason, left alone, pushed Queen off the boat. Thalia was unable to save her, and the dogs devoured her. Mason then attacked Thalia, but Violet had prepared an arrow and drove it into his chest, ending his life. Their nightmare wasn't over yet. More dogs began climbing onto the boat. The young women rushed to the control cabin. Thalia started the engine while Violet fought off the animals. As the boat accelerated, some of the dogs fell into the water. During the chaos, Violet hit her head and hallucinated, believing her brother was there. In her daze, she saw him with bloodshot eyes, arriving with the dogs, who strangely didn't attack him. As another dog tried to enter the cabin, Thalia fended it off with a champagne bottle. Collins nearly fell overboard, but Violet used an arrow to tie his leg to the vessel. The dog attacked again, but this time Violet grabbed it and killed it with her bow. Unfortunately, the boat crashed into rocks and got stuck. Seeing many rabid dogs swimming toward them, the girls climbed to the top of the cabin and fought back with whatever they could find. Just when it seemed hopeless, a helicopter arrived, opening fire and killing many of the beasts. The girls were overjoyed to see Hayden, who used her skills to eliminate the remaining dogs. She rescued the trio and from inside the helicopter threw a grenade that destroyed the boat and the remaining animals. As they flew away, they saw Farmer still alive, but unfortunately surrounded by even more rabid dogs, ready to finish him off. What did you think? Did the ending surprise you, or were you expecting it all along? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next movie breakdown. Want more? Check out our recap of similar movie right here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.